This episode of Budget MTG Decks is sponsored by TCG Player, the best place to buy your cards in the US. Welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All the cards you see in our videos are $1 or less, with exception of the Commander cards. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when a new video comes out. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Budget MTG Decks. I'm David, and today we're going to be looking at another fun and effective Commander deck you can build without breaking the bank. And today we have a sweet Enter the Battlefield themed Commander in the form of Yarok the Desecrated. Yarok costs 2, a black, a green, and a blue. So for 5 mana, we get a 3/5 Elemental Horror with Death Touch and Lifelink. But that's not all. Yarok states that if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Now that sounds really confusing. All it is when something comes into the battlefield, if it makes one of our things trigger, that thing's going to trigger an additional time. Super sweet, which means we're going to love to be abusing those enter the battlefield abilities. So the strategy of this deck is going to be, we're going to be ramping or drawing at the beginning of the game. Ramping because that allows us to get more mana, and drawing to make sure that also we're kind of making sure that we're not missing our land drops. And then we're going to play our commander with protection, because it's very important that Yarok stays on the battlefield if we want to get that value. And then we're going to be playing flicker, bounce, or reanimating stuff so that we can get multiple enter the battlefield triggers. It's going to be a value strategy deck. The price is also quite affordable. Yarok right now a little bit expensive at $12.45. The rest of the deck comes in at slightly over $25, which means you can get this deck for $37.78. So that's a bit under $40. Now let's have a look at the deck list group by category. We're going to start with the cards that synergize really well with all the enter the battlefield effects we want to be triggering. So we're going to start out with Nephalia Smuggler, Cunning Evasion, and Identity Thief. Nephalia Smuggler allows us to flicker a creature every single turn for 4 mana. What now flicker means is we're going to exile the creature and then return it back to the battlefield right immediately, which means of course it's going to exit, and then when it comes in, the enter the battlefield trigger is going to trigger again. What's also nice is that as we can do this instant speed, we can also kind of use it to protect Yarok. Should somebody use targeted removal against it, then we can quickly flicker Yarok and make sure that Yarok doesn't die. So the flicker also works really well for that. Cunning Evasion just makes sure that we can just attack with our creatures that have entered the battlefield abilities. Should somebody decide to block it, okay, fine, doesn't matter. We're just going to return it back to our hand and then play it again either that turn or another turn and get an additional enter the battlefield trigger. And also make sure that we can attack with impunity and not really have to worry about our stuff getting blocked and killed. And then Identity Thief is going to be attacking itself, and then it's going to flicker something else. It could be one of our creatures, preferably if we want to be making sure we got those enter the battlefield abilities. But we can also flicker something of somebody else, and then this thing's going to attack as a copy of that creature. And then at the end of the turn, the card that we exiled is going to be returned to the battlefield back under its owner's control. So you can use it either 2 ways. We can either use it to make sure that we got multiple triggers from other creatures we control with enter the battlefield abilities, or we can use it to attack somebody who's got something really nice, something really fat, and then we're attacking them with that fat creature, and they of course obviously can't block with that because that's been exiled until the beginning of the next end step. Next up is Genesis Chamber, Priest of the Bloodright, and Rampaging Balos. Now, Genesis Chamber states that whenever any non-token creature enters the battlefield under anybody's control, they're going to be getting a 1/1 mirror. Now, of course, with Yarok on the battlefield, this is going to trigger 2 times for everybody. So it's going to be making tons and tons of tokens for everybody. But of course, we're going to be having multiple enter the battlefield abilities triggering as well multiple times, because we're going to be casting the same creatures multiple times or flickering them, which means we're going to be getting more tokens. Priest of the Bloodright, when it enters the battlefield, is going to give us a 5/5 demon, and of course when Yarok's out, it's going to give us 2 5/5 demons, which is nothing to sniff at. And of course we're going to want to flicker this creature or return it back to our hand and cast it again to get as many 5/5 black demons with flying as possible. Remember that at the beginning of your upkeep we do lose 2 life with this thing, so it's actually not such a bad idea to cast it, get 2 demons, and then find a way to return it back to our hand so we don't lose the life. And Rampaging Balos, this card is good just in any green deck pretty much. Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield in your control, you're going to get a 4/4 beast creature token. And of course with Yarok on the battlefield, we're going to get, for every land we play, we're going to be getting 2 4/4 beasts. So this gets out of control real quick. Then we have Burglar Rat and Liliana Spectre. Burglar Rat states when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, and Liliana Spectre states whenever this creature enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, so they're exactly the same. Liliana Spectre, a little bit more powerful, has got the flying, but essentially we're going to be playing them exactly the same way. What's really nice about these two cards is they say each opponent discards a card. So we play this, and every opponent is going to discard 2 cards, and that is really going to be super powerful for such a very low cost. And remember, there's a lot of other cards that people might want to play in Yarok, but makes every player discard cards, and you don't want that. So Burglar Rat and Lilina Spectre is the safe choice here. And then we move on to Bloodseeker and Grave Merchant of Asphodel. Bloodseeker states that whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, they're going to lose 1 life, which means with Yarok on the battlefield, every creature that enters the battlefield under an opponent's control is going to lose them 2 life. Doesn't happen to us. Super sweet. Token players completely hosed by this card, and it comes in as early as turn 2. It's absolute beauty. And Grave Merchant of Asphodel, unbelievably powerful, triggers twice with Yarok. So that means worst case scenario, Yarok's on the battlefield. We've got, with Grave Merchant of Asphodel, Devotion to Black is minimum 3, absolute minimum, which means that if we're playing with 3 other players, let's say a normal game of Commander with 4 players, they've got 3 opponents. Each one of those opponents is going to be losing 6 life, which means we're going to be gaining 18 life minimum. And if we've got cards like Bloodseeker and other cards with Black Devotion, which we do have, it's going to get out of control. Especially if you flicker this, then it's pretty much game over. And then the last of the synergy cards is Peregrine Drake for 5. It's a 2/3 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, untap up to 5 lands. So essentially we play this, it's going to trigger twice, and it gains us a net of 5 lands that we can untap. So a minimum of 5 extra mana when we play this with Yarok on the battlefield. And again, a great target to flicker, so we can do it multiple times. Those are the synergy cards. Let's have a look at the protection cards. Now we divided the protection cards into 2 categories. Those that protect Yarok against targeted removal and the counter spells. To start off with, we're going to look at Undying Evil and Supernatural Stamina. We wanted some really low cost protection cards for Yarok because we essentially on turn 6, let's say, or when we have 6 mana in either case, we want to be able to play Yarok with 1 black mana left open to protect it. If it gets removed by some kind of destruction effect, with Undying Evil, it's going to come back to the battlefield again under our control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and with Supernatural Stamina, we're just going to return it back to our control tapped. So that's a great little way to make sure that when somebody uses that targeted removal on the turn that we play it, it won't die, or we can still keep it in either case. And then we have Ghostly Flicker and Displace. Both of these cards essentially the same. We're going to exile 2 cards, 2 creatures, and then return them back to the battlefield under our control. Yes, with Ghostly Flicker, it gives us a little more flexibility, also allowing us to target lands and artifacts. But let's say for both of these, we're going to be targeting 2 creatures. We can use this to protect Yarok and make sure that we get another enter the battlefield trigger from another creature. Or, of course, we can just use it plain to make sure that 2 of our creatures get double enter the battlefield triggers, which is very nice. Then we move on to the counter spells to protect Yarok or our board, and we're going to start with Negate, Counter Squall, and Familiar's Ruse. All these cost 2 mana, and Negate counters target non-creature spell. Counter Squall does the same, but also makes our opponent, its controller of the person who casts the spell, lose 2 life, and Familiar Ruse does have the downside that we need to bounce a creature back to our hand when we play this as an additional cost, but that's not so bad actually for us because that means we can play that creature again and get another activation, another trigger of the enter the battlefield effect. So very cheap. Make sure that somebody wants to board wipe us, wants to kill Yarok. These are great counter spells to make sure we can hit those instants and sorceries that want to kill our stuff. That is it for the protection cards. Let's have a look at the control spells. We divided the control spells into those that deal with creatures, those that deal with non-creatures, and our board wipes. To start off, we're going to look at Mana War and Dungeon Geist. Both of these creatures enter the battlefield, and then with Yarok on the battlefield, with Mana War, we're going to bounce 2 creatures back to their owner's hands, and with Dungeon Geist, going to make sure that we're going to tap 2 creatures, and they won't untap in their controls untap steps as long as we control Dungeon Geist. So that's really nice. We're going to be effectively getting rid of 2 things with these cards with Yaroks on the battlefield. Then we have Skin Render, Ravenous Chupacabra, and Shadowborn Demon. Skin Render, when it comes in, we're going to distribute 3 -1/1 counters on target creature. Ravenous Chupacabra, we get to destroy a creature, and Shadowborn Demon, the same, but it has to be a non-demon creature. But, you know, most of the time we're just going to be able to hit whatever the hell we want. And remember that Shadowborn Demon also states that at the beginning of your upkeep, if there's fewer than 6 creature cards in your graveyard, we're going to sacrifice a creature, where we do have some reanimation and stuff, so it's not even such a downside, and especially later on, it's just going to stick around. So with these things, with double activations, usually we're going to be able to kill 2 things whenever one of these creatures come in. And the last one of the ones that deal with creatures, that is Agent of Treachery. That costs a whopping 7 mana. It's a human rogue, and it states when it enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanents. This does not only hit creatures, it hits any permanent we want. And at the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. So what's cool is this thing's going to come in, yes, very expensive, 7 mana. It's going to trigger twice. You're going to take 2 things that we want. Those things stay under our control. Even if Agent of Treachery dies, or if it gets flickered, or if it gets bounced, we still get to keep those. So if we do get to flicker or bounce Agent of Treachery and it enters the battlefield again, we're going to essentially have 4 things, which means that at the beginning of that end step, we're going to draw also 3 cards, and that's going to push us ahead, especially of course because we also took 4 of the best things on the table. Then the cards that deal with non-creature, we got Reclamation Sage and Manglehorn. Both of these things come in, and we're going to be able to destroy target artifact. And of course, with Yarok, we're going to destroy 2 artifacts. Reclamation Sage has the added flexibility of allowing us also to choose to destroy an enchantment should we so want to. And Manglehorn has the added ability of making sure that as long as it's on the battlefield, artifacts that our opponents control will enter the battlefield tapped. So that's of course super annoying with those mana rocks. Then we have Acidic Slime and Terastodon. Acidic Slime, of course, Commander staple. Every green deck can play it. It's not a big deal. It's just a great card. 2/2 Death Touch. Enters the battlefield, also able to destroy an artifact. But the great thing of this, of course, it gives us the extra flexibility of not only also being able to hit enchantments, but also lands. And Terastodon takes it a step even further, being able to hit everything that is not a creature. And it's going to be hitting 3 of those things. Of course, the controller will get 3/3 elephant creature tokens, but that's not such a big deal. Yarok is a 3/5 anyway, so they're not going to be attacking us with those 3/3 elephant tokens, whichever way. So essentially, what this thing comes in with Yarok, destroying 6 of the best non-creature permanents is going to be absolutely brutal. Then we have Agent of Erebos for 4 mana. It's a 2/2 zombie. When this guy enters the battlefield or another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we're going to exile all cards from target player's graveyard. So this is going to get rid of, again, those people who are using those graveyard strategies. This thing comes in, and we're going to get rid of 2 of our opponent's graveyards. Usually if you're playing with 3 other people, if you're able to exile 2 of your opponents, not everybody's going to be playing graveyard strategy, so 2 will probably be enough. And then, you know, even if we flicker it again, they're going to be in such a world of hurt if they rely on their graveyard. Then we move on to the board wipes. You got Displacement Wave, Whelming Wave, and Aether Gale. The great thing about these is that we're going to be bouncing a lot of stuff. You know, usually we're going to be bouncing the stuff of our opponents, but with us, it doesn't really matter that much if, for example, with Whelming Wave, we have to bounce all our creatures, because we're going to be casting them again, and we're going to make sure we're going to be getting all those extra enter the battlefield triggers once again. And with Displacement Wave, you can make sure that you make sure that that X is 4 to make sure that we do not bounce Yarok, for example. And with Aether Gale, yeah, we could just hit our opponent's stuff, but we can also hit our own stuff should we want to get those extra triggers. So it's very versatile, these bounce board wipes. And then we have Languish and Demon of Dark Schemes. Languish is a sorcery, so this is not a card that is going to be triggering multiple times. Essentially, it's just all creatures get -4/-4. Well, coincidentally, Yarok is a 3/5, which means Yarok's going to be fine, sitting pretty, and this thing's going to kill all the other good stuff that our opponents have. And Demon of Dark Schemes is a creature. When it enters the battlefield, all other creatures get -2/-2 until the end of turn. So with Yarok, that's going to be -4/-4. Yes, once again, Yarok will survive that. And we're going to be getting all those nice little, energy counters when the stuff dies. Remember, Yarok only cares when stuff enters the battlefield, not when it dies. But when we're wiping the board with -4/-4, we're still going to get a ton of energy tokens. That is it for the control spells. Let's have a look at the card advantage cards. We divided the card advantage cards into those that draw us cards and those that recur as cards from the graveyard. So those are the recursion cards. To start off with the card draw, we got Elvish Visionary, Wall of Blossoms, and Fibblethip the Lost. All these cards cost 2, enter the battlefield, draws a card. Yes, on turn 2 you can pop them down. You don't feel bad, it's fine. You draw a card, good, it replaces itself. That's also known as a cantrip. absolutely fine. Later, when Yarok's on the battlefield, it gets really nasty because drawing 2 cards for 2 mana and then still having something on the battlefield which we can flicker or bounce later on again is going to give us insane value. Absolutely beautiful. Then we have Dusk Legion Zealot, Coiling Oracle, and Watcher for tomorrow. Dusk Legion Zealot also draws a card when it enters, but we lose a life. Okay, slightly worse. Coiling Oracle doesn't technically draw us a card. We got to reveal the top card. If it's a land, we put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, we do draw a card, so it's slightly better, you might say, because it actually can also mana ramp us. And Watcher for tomorrow is got Hideaway, which means it's going to enter the battlefield tapped. We look at the top 4 cards, exile one of them, and then the rest goes at the bottom of our library. And then when this card leaves the battlefield, so Watcher for tomorrow, then we're going to get the exiled card back into our hand. And remember, so with all of these cards that we looked at right now, they're going to trigger twice, including Watcher for tomorrow. So we're going to look at top 4 cards, grab 1, top 4 cards, grab 1. So when it leaves the battlefield, we're going to get 2 cards for that. Then we have Gonti, Lord of Luxury, and Muldrifter. Gonti, when it comes in, it's a 2/3 death touches. This is nice to have on the battlefield anyway. We're going to look at the top 4 cards of our opponent's library, of target opponent's library, exile one of them face down, put the rest at the bottom of the library in a random order, and then as long as that card is exiled, we can actually play it and spend mana as those were any type. So this is cool. We pay for mana, and we're going to get this 2 triggers, so we're going to get 2 great cards that we can, play. We still need to pay for it, but still we get a nice little choice of that. And Muldrifter, also archetypical commander card, never bad in blue. We're just going to play it, enters the battlefield, and with Yarok on the battlefield, it's going to be drawing us 4 cards, which is absolutely brutal. Then we have Tachova, Benthic Druid, and Soul of the Harvest. Tachova states that whenever land enters the battlefield under our control, we're going to gain 1 life and draw a card. That is really, really nice when for every land we're gaining 2 life and drawing 2 cards. And Soul of the Harvest states that whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, we're going to be drawing a card. So yes, for every creature we play, we draw 2 cards. Remember, it doesn't count tokens, but it's still going to be so beautiful when we bounce and flicker our stuff. Then we move on to the recursion cards. We've got Cadaver Imp, Phyrexian Delver, and Puppeteer Clique. Slightly different, all these 3 cards. Cadaver Imp is going to, when it enters the battlefield, return a creature card from our graveyard back to our hand. Phyrexian Delver returns that creature directly from the graveyard to the battlefield, but we do lose a life equal to its converted mana cost. And Puppeteer Clique returns something from the graveyard to the battlefield, but it has to be a creature from our opponent's graveyard. It's going to go onto the battlefield under our control. It's going to gain haste, so we can attack with it, and then at the end of the turn, it will get exiled. Benefit of this, so, I mean, it's going to be pretty brutal to exile 2 of the best creatures from our opponent's graveyards, swing in with them, and then they lose them forever. But it also has persist, which means when this creature dies, it's going to come back to the battlefield again with a -1/-1 counter again. And of course, entering the battlefield is going to trigger once again, and then you flicker it again, which means it comes back again, and then it doesn't have the -1/-1 counter again, which means you can let it die again. It's going to come back again, so you can get so many activations off of this. Then we have Archaeomancer and Mnemonic Wall. Archaeomancer and Mnemonic Wall, both, when they enter the battlefield, we get to return an instant or sorcery card from our graveyard to our hand. This, of course, with Ghostly Flicker, is we can continuously, for 3 mana, return Ghostly Flicker, for example, back to our hand. And Archaeomancer or Mnemonic Wall, we can keep on bouncing them, and every time getting an additional trigger from another creature of entering the battlefield. And that is a thing of beauty, but you can also just get some removal back or something. It doesn't really matter, but usually for that, it's going to be really, really nice. Then we move on to the ramp cards. We divided the ramp cards into 3 categories: the mana dorks, land fetch cards, and the mana rocks. So to start off, we got Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, and Rishkar Pima Renegade. Now, Elvish Mystic and Llanowar Elves, the same, come in super early, tap for a green, nothing fancy. Rishkar Pina Renegade can actually make 2 creatures into mana dorks, allowing them to put a +1/+1 counter on them, and then they can tap for a green mana, which is very nice, especially for those creatures such as the Dusk Legion Zealot or Wall of Blossoms, for example. When it's on the battlefield, pop it down, and all of a sudden it's also a mana rock, which is very nice. Then we have the cards that fetch us lands. We got Rampant Growth and Harrow. Rampant Growth, just you play it, and then you're going to look for a land and put it onto the battlefield tapped, only a basic land. And Harrow, we do need to sacrifice a land, but we get to put 2 basic lands from our library onto the battlefield, and they're not going to be tapped, so that's actually a great deal. Essentially, this is just ramp for 1 green, and it's also instant speed, which is nice. Then we have Wood Elves, Spring Bloom Druid, and Yavimaya Dryad. These 3 cards, essentially the same. When they come in, we're going to be searching for a land, popping it onto the battlefield, Wood Elves is going to be looking for a forest that does not come onto the battlefield tapped. Springblue Druid is going to search for 2 basic lands and put them onto the battlefield tapped. We do need to sacrifice a land. And Yavimaya Dryad is going to be looking for a forest and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So remember, when these things come in, they're going to trigger twice, which is very, very nice for mana ramp with Yarok on the battlefield. Then we move on to the mana rocks. These get no benefit from being bounced or from Yarok's inclusion, but it's still nice because they come in super early, allow us to get to Yarok as quickly as possible. We got Golgari Signet, Simic Signet. Then we have Talisman of Resilience and Talisman of Curiosity. These are new mana rocks, and Yarok really benefits from these. And then we are going to move on to the land cards. For the lands, we divided it into 6 islands, 6 swamps, and 9 forests, and 17 non-basic lands. To start off with, a Dismal Backwater, Jungle Hollow, and Thornwood Falls all give us the option of 2 colors, come in tapped, and also gain us a life. Then we have Rupture Spire, Transguild Promenade, and Gateway Plaza. All come in tapped. All make sure that we need to tap a land or produce a mana when it comes in, but they tap for mana of any color, which is a nice one because we're playing 3 colors. Then we have Vivid Creek, Vivid Marsh, and Vivid Grove. All come in tapped. All come in with 2 charge counters on it and only give us 1 color that we need, but we can remove a charge counter from it and tap the card to give us mana of any color. So it can give us mana of any color 2 times. Then we have Opulent Palace, Crumbling Visage, and Detection Tower. Opulent Palace comes in tapped, but it gives us mana of any color pretty much that we want. Those are the 3 colors we're playing. Crumbling Visage comes in tapped, but does give us mana of any color we want when it enters the battlefield. After that, it's only going to tap for colorless. And Detection Tower taps for colorless, but also allows us to remove hexproof from our opponents when we want to, from our opponent's creatures. Then we have Emergent Zone, Encroaching Waste, and Grim Backwoods. Emergent Zone allows us to cast spells for 1 turn as if they had flash. We do need to pay a mana and sacrifice it though. Encroaching Waste allows us to destroy target non-basic land if we sacrifice it and pay for mana. And Grim Backwoods allows us to sacrifice a creature to draw a card, which is very nice. Especially when we've got some tokens on the battlefield that we don't really need, we can just turn those into card draw. And lastly, we've got Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds, which we can tap and sacrifice to search for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Those are the lands. Let's have a look at 2 examples starting hands. In the first starting hand, we're going to be ramping early with Elvish Mystic and then going on to play Acidic Slime. After that, we're going to be playing Ghostly Flicker and flickering Acidic Slime, and then afterwards we can play Archaeomancer to return Ghostly Flicker back to our hand, and then after that, a number of times we can play Archaeomancer with Ghostly Flicker and bouncing Acidic Slime every single time, which is very nice. In the next hand, we're going to start off a little bit slower. We're going to start first with Nephalia Smuggler, which allows us to flicker something every single turn, follow it up with Simic Signet, making sure that then after that we're going to be playing Yarok, keeping up that protection with Negate, and then after that we can play Agent of Treachery to steal our opponents, 2 of our opponents' best permanents, and then the turn after that, great to just use Nephalia Smuggler to keep on flickering Agent of Treachery. Now let's have a look at some non-budget upgrades. Now here we have some examples of some non-budget upgrades. These are the cards that are substantially more powerful. These are almost strict upgrades to the cards that we have included in the deck. So if you do have a couple of extra bucks lying around, have a look at this list and see if you can improve the deck with some of these suggestions. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm David, and this was Budget MTG Decks. Find all the cards discussed in this video in the description below. Also, show you're a fan of the channel by rocking this awesome Budget MTG Decks merchandise. This show was made possible by the support of our loyal patrons. Head on over to patreon.com/budgetmtgdecks and donate as little as $1 per month.